think it's just good to keep a record of certain interactions. One in particular today. And how all the events from today kind of lined up with this interaction. And the day started out filing a claim for, I got hit. The 350 got hit the other day. A really nice guy. He just didn't see me and bumped into me. Anyway, tried to contact my dad just to get his input about proper routes. You know, he's got a lot more experience in life when it comes to dealing with insurance claims than I do. And sometimes we just like to do that. We like to, you know, just pick each other's brains a little bit. Give us the best avenue, best position or approach. I guess you should say approach, yeah. When it comes to just handling things in a manner that is effective. All parties considered, as well as ourselves. So. But couldn't get a hold of him. Mom told me got to speak to Mom. She's my nieces, and boy, they brought so much joy in my life today. Just getting to see their faces. And she told me Dad's been struggling without me around. And having a hard time doing basic car work stuff like brakes and whatnot. I laugh, but it's kind of serious actually. And so that was kind of weighing on me, and I knew I needed to call and check on him. And she told me she wanted to hire me to come and do the island for the kitchen renovation, you know, just so that can be finished one day. And Dad called me back, and we were talking, and I brought up what Mom had told me, and he didn't want to acknowledge it or say that. He did acknowledge that when I brought up, hey, you know, Mom said she might want to hire me to do the island. He said, yeah, getting your expertise would be handy. Would be, and he actually used the word expertise. Which, if you know my dad, that's quite uncommon for him when it comes to he and I's relationship and who I am in his eyes. You know. Anyway. Which, I don't know how the conversation shifted. Maybe it was the talking about the brakes or whatever it was, but really more so we got back on the same subject of abuse in the household. And a lot of it stems from unmet expectations of my dad. He's a diagnosed bipolar, and there were many years that he was very abusive, verbally, psychologically, emotionally. He wasn't on the right medicine. And on top of that, he not was lazy, but things that he tried in life didn't seem to didn't always seem to monetarily fix the type of life that he was trying to live. We'll call it living beyond your means or whatnot, but more so, he was chasing something, a mentality. He was chasing his father's approval, his dad's approval. And through that process, he was always trying to gain more and more and more, which he did. You know, we had the house at Garvin Lane, and he had cattle, rental property, 10 acres that sat on Garvin Lane, and then he had a 60-acre farm that sat on Detour Road next to David Rose and that subdivision out there on Detour. And then he had, I don't even know how many head of cattle he had, but he had Gelvian Angus cattle, yeah. And built a duplex on Smallhouse Road. Used to be just a small little house. He put a second story on it, turned it into a duplex. It's still standing there today, right across from, I think it's a Pizza Hut now, but it used to be a junior food store. And we actually grew up there for a period of time when our house burned down. Well, it didn't burn down, but Anna's room caught on fire. And, you know, he did. Drilled oil wells, raised cattle, you know, had an apartment complex on Harrington Street. Not a complex, but he used to own the Gables before it turned into a giant apartment complex. He owned all that property over there. And his mental ability to hold on and to be able to pay all the bills as they stacked up against him, and Mom and Dad were fighting all the time, and they were trying to get there. He was trying to get to the other side of what he was heading towards, his ambition, but the bills kept stacking up, and one thing led to another. The fighting started, and then the abuse started, and then they got separated, and then the attorneys came, and then they took everything. And us kids, we were just kind of caught in the middle of all this happening, watching it, and being affected by it. But that's not the point of why I set out to say there was something that just specifically stuck out in my day today. Anyway, as Dad and I were talking, and he was talking about that, and I know where he's at right now. He's getting older. He don't want to get out of the chair. He spent a lot of years on the computer. Part of that's working for AFNI. You know, he spent 8 years in customer service on the telephone. He got acquainted to the chair. And when I got home from college, we set out to change a few things. You know, get Mom and Dad back in the house. You know, because they were renting, and Mom was doing everything she could to pay rent and all that stuff, and the financial situation was just all messed up. And I got my business degree from UK, and I came back home, and that's what I set out to do. There was a lot of family trauma that was still present in our household: addiction, thievery, and most of these things were just a way to numb the pain of the past, from children being taken away to physical abuse to all kinds of stuff, but a lot of it stemmed from addiction. And being taught wrong things, you know, or being taught to do whatever it is that you want to do in life instead of doing what's right, you know, right by people. And not going to say it wasn't always present, but there's these small elements, there's the good in people that does exist if you're looking for it. And that's what I want to talk about, essentially. Anyway, Dad and I got to arguing again, and I realized it was getting to be a toxic conversation. He just won't admit some truths to himself. We can't get to a place of understanding on it. And we just don't see eye to eye on how things played out in his mind or in my mind. He doesn't understand the fight that I put in or the sacrifices that I made in my lifetime to be able to just to stay there and handle the daily tasks of the house. And yet he called himself man of the house, but refused to do the things a man of the house is responsible for. And so I took it upon myself, as I've done in my youth, and again when I got out of college. Yeah, there was a lot I didn't know about living that he taught me along the way. Things that he did know. He gave pieces of himself to me, and I am definitely appreciative of those things. But he also attacked my intelligence, my perseverance. He also would lift me up when I would get to the places where I would fall down. He'd restore me in a way, or give me another perspective to go at it again. But at the same time, he'd also belittle me and tear me down when I would be happy about something I accomplished. So I don't know how to feel about it, but the ebb and flow of our relationship. I got to a point with him where I finally was, Dad, I ain't coming. I'm not coming. I'm not coming until we get this thing settled, till we get the truth, until you say it, and we can have real healing about what you witnessed. Because the story would always change while we were heading on a path. Heading in a direction, it would just keep changing, shifting to fit whatever his mood was or how he felt. But that ain't the truth. That ain't the truth of us heading down a path together. It doesn't just shift and change. Your goal remains the same as you steadfastly move towards it. And yeah, there's all kinds of externalities that are affecting it along the way, so you're probably never going to arrive at the ideal, but you still shoot for it. You gotta shoot for it, because if you don't, you got nothing. Well, that's not entirely true, but that's some of that mentality. And keep your nose to the grindstone, and when you look up, things have changed. Right? That you miss out on a lot of stuff along the way when you have that kind of mentality. Yeah, there's productivity, and yeah, you're gonna make it, but sometimes there's a more beautiful ride that you're missing, and there's just nothing you can do about it. Because that's not what you're trying to get to. What you're trying to fight for is the truth in every situation. To attack false memories and attack behaviors. Attack that which is causing more pain in your life. And that seems crazy that you've got to attack pain, which may be causing more pain in the process, but it's a level of discipline that must be taken to stand up. Sometimes it's as easy as Sunday morning and it's quiet, and you just say it and it just happens. Sometimes it's not, and it sucks. Today was one of those days. So he hung up the phone on me when I started saying, no, I'm not coming until we get to the squared truth on this, and you get square with me. And he wouldn't get square with me, so he hung up the phone. I sent him a message. I said, whenever you're ready to heal, whenever you're ready to tell me the truth, I'll be here. I will be here, and I'm waiting. But if you're never going to do that, if you're never going to give me that, and we don't need to talk to each other, and that is so sad, but it's true. Well, I started driving around today and thinking about the fact that what I'm holding my dad accountable for is a lie. Lying to me along the way of what he thought was the way to be in life. And I remembered something. My last order of the night was at Papa John's. Just pretty simple. And I got to the Papa John's, and the order was scheduled for 9:58. I showed up at 9:56. I'm always early. Not always, but most of the time I'm early. Like 94%. 5 minutes early. My grandfather, made me realize that when I'm working, I'm not on my time. I'm on another man's time. It belongs to him. It don't belong to me, because he's paying me. If he's paying me, that time don't belong to me. Otherwise, I ain't made a fair trade. I haven't been a good man. I haven't been honest. Show up 5-10 minutes early. That's the way it is. If you're going to be late, give them a call, perhaps reschedule, or just, don't back up on a deal, but, be early. So, I get there, I'm early, and the order's for a couple items. And there's about 15 people standing in there. Well, 8, and then later on, five girls came walking in. It was like a party. And I took one look at the room, and I read the room, and I said, okay, it might take a little while. So I sent the man a message on a message that said, thank you for choosing DoorDash. This is Andrew, your Dasher, this evening. I've arrived at Papa John's, and currently your order is still being prepared. I will let you know when it's ready, and I'll be... The man said, thank you for letting me know. Well, I waited around, and there was some conversation around the room, and I was reluctant, although something was telling me that I should, ask him if the order was ready. Something in a small voice inside was like, it's probably already ready. But I waited for everybody else to speak, because they were there before I was. And, but that's still that nudge was happening again and again. And I was like, man, I just sent that message to the guy. What if it wasn't? What if it was already ready? And then these girls came in, they were like, how do we order? And I was like, well, I finally pushed my way up there. I spoke to the gentleman behind the counter, and I said, you got to order for Russell G. And he said, yep, it's right here. It was already ready. And it wasn't something that had just gotten placed on there. So that 10 minutes that I would have been standing there waiting for that order, letting other people talk, my order had been sitting there the whole time. And I realized that I had sent that message to that guy. And I had sent it as a way to mitigate the situation I was currently in, and I had made an assumption by trying to read the room without, being forthcoming and asking, and then reading the room. You know, you can read the room, but you can't know for sure. He said, yeah, we've got the order. And I said, okay. I grabbed it, I put it in the bag. I said, I'm on my way. As I pulled up, and I heard a voice inside that said, you know, I lied to that man in that text message. I did. That's a lie. It's a small one, but it is still a lie. And I heard a voice, you know, where I thought in my head, my subconscious was like, you know, maybe there'll be an opportunity to have an interaction with this man, because I need to do right by him, for me and for him. But I know a lot of it's more for me, but also it just wouldn't be right if I didn't look him in the face and tell him that, because that's his 10 minutes, it ain't mine, you know. Lo and behold, the man wanted to have an interaction with me. That's the way that the order came down. And hand the order to the customer. Sometimes people just say leave it at the door, but not this night. And as I walked up, there were thoughts in my head of say, will you do right? The Lord's provided you an opportunity. Will you do it? It's just as simple as that. He opened the door, and I knew what I was going to do. I knew I wasn't reluctant. Some people say, what a man don't know can't hurt him. But that's not what I was taught. I've heard it before. I've probably done it before. But it isn't the way that I was taught as a child, you know. And I remembered who taught me. And I looked the man in the face and I said, you know, sir, I got to be completely honest with you. I sent that message before I fully knew everything in the room. I made an assumption and it was incorrect. Your order would have, I didn't say your order would be here early, but I said, I just made an assumption, and your order had been sitting there, and before I sent that message, I wanted to let you know that what I told you was not correct. And that's not really fair to the store, because the store had your order. And there were a lot of people there, and I made an assumption, and that's my fault, you know. In so many words, that's what I said to him. And he said, you know, that's okay. That is okay. You know, granted, the order was still 4 minutes early. I was still 4 minutes early, you know. I didn't have to tell him anything. I didn't have to. But I did. Because in the end, me getting away with them 10 minutes, and I've probably done it before, and I'll probably do it again. But for some reason tonight, those 10 minutes, they didn't belong to me. I needed to be honest about that. And I was provided an opportunity specifically. And sometimes God works that way in our lives. He specifically gives us opportunities to do what's right, just to see what we will do. Or at least that's what I believe. And the man showed me mercy. And he was kind. And I remember who taught me that, and that's my dad. He taught me that. He taught me that we were human beings, you know, and that we make mistakes, and all fall short of the glory of God. But if you're honest, even to a fault, because that's the way some people look at this. They look at it like it's honest to a fault. Say, but it's still honest. And can't nobody take that away from you, because that's between you and God. That ain't got nothing to do with them. Now, it might give you consequences in life depending on the situation, some more severe than others. But the truth is the truth. Even when it makes you look bad, it's the truth. Yeah, it's only 10 minutes. But I think about my dad showing me that, teaching me that, with his own behavior, leading in by example in the right way. What is more strength? To take 10 minutes from a man, or to tell a man that you took 10 minutes from him and ask for his mercy? Give him an opportunity to show his mercy to you. I'll leave you with that.